Good afternoon. It is Wednesday, March 5th, 2024. Welcome. This is a school board briefing and the time is 2:30 p.m. Sergeant Ars, has the front lobby been cleared?
Yes.
Thank you. Board members, as we begin today's discussions, I just want to remind everyone of our protocol that each board member will have 4 minutes for initial comment, 2 minutes for follow-up comments per agenda item. On today's agenda is strategic plan update with communications, agenda review of the March 5th, 2024 regular agenda, public comment, good of the order, and board member comments and reports. This afternoon, we're going to begin with the strategic plan update communications, and we welcome to the podium Irma Lancaster, Director of Strategic Communications, Rob Spicker, Assistant Director of Communications. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, school board members, Superintendent Bernier, and Attorney Dupuy-Bruno. It's who is not here, actually. Today we have Chorus. Welcome, Chorus. Communications is happy to be here to show you how we are supporting the refreshed strategic plan in Vision 2030. So, you know, I'm Irma, Director of Strategic Communications. With me is Rob, and our Chief Communications and Government Relations Officer, Angel Gomez, as you know, is unable to join us as he's up in Tallahassee, but I know he wanted to be here as well, and I'm sure he is watching. Our agenda for today is to provide an overview of the communications department and demonstrate some of the ways that we support the school district strategic plan. We will then go over some analytics to demonstrate the department's impact, review our media relations, and finish with our areas of focus. I'll start with a short overview of some of the services the communications team provides in our work to increase opportunities to share good news about our staff, students, and schools with the school community. We use various methods of communications to increase the amount of content being pushed to parents with regular information on education, such as school messenger, emails, phone calls, and texts. We also use our district and school website, social media channels, marketing, advertising, news media, community and district events, and parent university, just to name a few. We measure parent engagement through surveys and with metrics made available using digital channels. This helps us to better gauge and be more responsive to the communications needs of our school community stakeholders. Much of that work supports the strategic plan pillar, strengthening student, family, and community relations under Objective 9 to increase family engagement and partnership. Our KPI is to increase the percent of families that report positive responses towards the district's approach to communications. Our raw baseline was divided into 3 categories: families of students in elementary, middle, and high schools. For elementary, our raw baseline was 80%, and our actual baseline via a January survey was 81%. Our baseline for middle was 69%, and our actual baseline was 78%. And for high school, it was 66%, and our actual was 79%. We will resurvey families in June, with our target being 1% higher than it was in January, with an additional 1% target increase per year. When we survey families that we support, we want to measure if their responses are positive to the school district of Lee County's communications approach. While our refreshed strategic plan asks us to measure responses by grade level, we did conduct previous surveys that took a look at the overall response. In our June 2023 responses, as well as our recent survey in January, our overall responses were 80% positive towards the district's communications approach. We received 3,300 responses last year and 4,100 this year out of approximately 87,000 messages sent. While that may seem like a low number, according to research by Qualtrics, a good response rate for a survey is 5 to 15%. That can be even lower when it comes to school district research, as indicated by New York Public Schools. While surveys to employees and students can lead to response rates of up to 60 to 75%, the response rate from families is much lower. In an effort to increase our parent participation and response rate, we have referenced some strategies and are working to implement those in future surveys, such as the time of day we send surveys out, as well as following up with families. Our families are able to provide us feedback in the survey and at our community events. This is just a sample of some of the things they've told us. Continue the great communication outreach. Thank you for all you do. Or the information is really good and important for us parents. Now I'll turn it over to Rob.
So in addition to the surveys, which ask our families for some direct feedback, there are other communication tools that can measure with analytics the systems that we provide. School Messenger being one of those, obviously, and in fiscal year 2022, the communication department sent more than 41 million messages via a combination of emails, texts, and phone calls, with more than a 90% delivery rate for emails and calls. For fiscal year 2023, we sent almost 20 million total messages, with again more than a 90% delivery rate for the emails and the phone calls. We do know that the higher number in 2022 is really due to Hurricane Ian. We sent all our messages all 3 ways to ensure that our families were getting them, and we collected our data in each December. The text message delivery rate is lower because, if you do recall, that is a service that our users, our families, must opt into. Texts, though, do happen to be, according to our survey, what our families most prefer as their method of communication, emails being second to that. One data that we use to track if we're going in the right directions with our communications is going to be our website. And our overall number of unique visitors in fiscal year 2022 is 1.3 million, 1.4 million in 2023. Unique views, that counts for one person. So say I view the same page 10 times, which I'm sure I have done, it still only counts as one view. By analyzing the individual pages, we know that our highest number of visits are made first to the careers page, then to the Focus Parent Portal, and third to student enrollment. Now, when we're running a campaign, we can drive traffic to certain pages by doing things such as putting a banner on the district and our school home pages, using pop-up alerts during an emergency, sharing on social media, or through a school messenger. And we do see that this actually works well. For example, in the last 2 Decembers, we had about 5,000 unique views to the student enrollment page, whereas in the last 2 Januaries, when we were promoting proximity to our elementary and middle school families, we saw that number increase to 12,000 last year and 13,000 this year. We also know that promotion helps to work because our families that needed to take action during the elementary and middle school proximity, 75% of them did, filling out the forms that were required before the student enrollment period began. So we continue to go over some of our analytics. We can also look at our social media engagement. We measure here the total reach, which means the total number of people that see our content. That's how we're measured on Facebook and Instagram. On X, they measure impressions, which is the number of times that the content is displayed. And our content, as we can see, continues to grow on Facebook. It's clear that's where our stakeholders are finding information about us on social media. Our Facebook analytics show an increased reach from 1.3 to 1.3 million from over 800,000 the year before. And according to our data, most of our followers are women between the ages of 18 and 54. Instagram actually saw a decrease of about 14,000. We can check our top content on those outlets as well. And in 2023, the top posts were videos. And videos are a great way that we go out and tell our story. And we see that our followers interact more during this method. And we see most of that engagement is on Facebook, but we do use YouTube to reach the stakeholders that continue to use that platform.
To further understand how our work compares to other districts, we thought we would look at some of the impact of other school district social media. The School District of Lee County has 11,000 subscribers to our YouTube channel and 42,000 followers on Facebook. We have produced approximately 2,500 videos. When compared to our neighboring districts, Collier and Charlotte, we have about 9,000 more subscribers on YouTube and twice the number of followers on Facebook than Collier. Their video content is significantly lower than ours. You might say those are smaller than Lee County, so let's take a look at Miami-Dade, the largest school district in Florida and third largest in the country. We exceed them by 8,000 on YouTube, and they only surpass us on Facebook by 4,000 followers. And they too have a low number of videos produced. Why do I keep mentioning videos? Because we see that videos are what's most engaging. We said, why not? Let's take a look at what the second largest school district in the country took a look at Los Angeles. Our engagement surpasses them in the thousands on both YouTube and Facebook. We see that the School District of Lee County has more YouTube subscribers and videos than the top 2 and 3 school districts in the country. While we are proud of this data, we recognize that we always have room for improvement, and we're continuously collaborating with communications teams in surrounding districts to share strategies and ideas.
Media relations, that's also a key part of our strategy, as our media partners have the ability to reach a wider audience beyond just our school community, and we engage them through a variety of methods. First are going to be the press releases. These are sent to all of our local media outlets, and they're notifications of newsworthy events or a call to action for coverage. We highlight student, staff, and district accomplishments, and if we're not providing video and photos for their use, we stand by to facilitate interview and video opportunities as they are requested. The numbers you see are by each school year, and they're pretty consistent the last few years. Our press events, those are our press conferences, ribbon cuttings, a groundbreaking ceremony, a construction tour, or sometimes an invitation to all media to come join us at a school for a particular opportunity or event. We typically set up, or I should say Back to School Week, Media Week, that's an example of this, where we typically set up 6 to 7 opportunities that highlight something new or important for our families to know as we enter into the school year. Open Gate demonstration that many of you attended in August, an example of one such event. We do also keep track of the comparison of the negative versus positive news that is posted online, not just by our local outlets, but this can be state and national outlets as well. For a story to be considered anything but neutral, the Pew Research Center says the number of positive and negative statements within it must outnumber each other by at least 2 to 1. Well, knowing who's picking up and how it's being picked up and how it's being portrayed helps us create better and more targeted pitches that we believe can result in more favorable coverage. And what we believe we're seeing in the data presented is really a balancing of the narrative about the school district and a more accurate count by separating sports stories into their own category. The trend in negative coverage is really very encouraging. In the 2021 school year, 11% of the total stories posted online were negative. In 22 and 23 school year, negative stories dropped to 4% of the total, and through January of this school year, less than 2% of our coverage so far is considered negative, and 80% of those stories have all been posted by one outlet.
Thank you, Rob. To maximize the impact of our communications, our areas of focus for the year ahead are to continue studying the analytics and adjust our strategies and tactics accordingly. We will also continue to plan for regular community engagement opportunities to keep our students and their families informed and engaged. Thank you for your time. Now I turn it over to Superintendent Bernier for comments and board member questions.
Just a couple of comments, and this presentation was put to bed before the survey tools that we purchased were available. We had not yet made that decision as a board. So a lot of the survey information relies on the former surveys that we've had in the past. As we work with Thought Exchange, we'll develop the surveys that allow us to drill down into specific grade levels at specific schools that the strategic plan requires. So thank you for that support of this communications team to give them the tools necessary to bring you the data that they want. I think probably most importantly is where this presentation sort of leaves off, and it would be, I guess, inappropriate for me not to mention how important it is for our parents to be involved in school. And I suggest that all the parent university has been at, and all of you have done a fabulous job doing the introductions to kick off those events. Not everybody can volunteer a whole day or a full period or 3 days a week. What we're encouraging so much of is just stopping by, seeing what you can do. When you have time, could you take something home from a classroom, get some things ready like name tags or name tents or other things that you can do on your own time. I think so often parents think I have to be a full-time volunteer in order to have an impact at a school. And we're encouraging that any time that they provide to their child in their child's classroom is of value. So thank you for the parent university process that's back underway this year, face-to-face. We continue to do after-action research on all of it and making sure that we can continue to strengthen that program. I'll turn it over for your discussion as a board.
Board members, do you have any comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Persons.
I always like going first so no one has my questions. Y'all are doing an excellent job district-wide, but I've noticed most of the schools have their individual Facebook page and website, and there's a large discrepancy there as far as that. Do y'all have any programs to help them increase their viewership and quality and things like that?
So Facebook recently updated the way business pages are managed, and so now we've been able to put all of those pages directly under the Facebook page of the school district, so it can be supervised that way. However, it can't be, content can't be generated just by the school district, so we do support schools in the management of their pages. One issue that we do see, which is similar for the websites and the social media pages, is that staff turnover is quite frequent, and so then a new person is assigned to that page. So we're constantly updating our website and social media managers at the school sites to provide them with support. And if there is information that we want to send on behalf of the district, we will additionally send it to the school so that they can share it on their pages. But of course, they also have their own content with their fundraisers, et cetera. But we're always here to help, and Laura Howard, our digital manager, is a great support for all of them.
Board members, any other questions? Ms. Morgan?
That was a great question. And following up on that, by the way, I think you guys are doing a great job reaching out to families. So a huge improvement. But I'm thinking that, for example, different schools some schools don't even put any information about their SACs. They don't put any information about how a parent can be involved. It seems to me that there needs to be a minimum expectation of what is on each school's website. People trying to get into the schools are struggling because the schools aren't putting the information that makes it possible for them to gain access. So I would like to see some minimum standard. Now, my other question, my real question, or my own question was, so we've lost all of the news media, the print media, and that really was the way that we got to people who are not parents, people who are not grandparents, people who are not in the schools. How are we going to reach stakeholders that we need to have invested in the school district when we go out to them and ask them for help? The news press used to be a way of getting to the older community, the tax-paying community. We don't have that now. How do we get to that particular group?
So just to clarify, are you referring to some of the updates that the news press has recently made on their distribution and availability?
No.
Or, because you said print media, we've lost print media.
Well, we have. To the extent that, when I first came on the board, we had a dedicated reporter. And that person was sitting up there every meeting.
Right.
And there was always something in the news press about what was happening at board meetings, what was happening in schools. Then it became FGCU and the school district. Then it became Collier and the school district and FGCU. And I don't think there's anybody who covers public education anymore.
They have a beat reporter, but you're right, they are now responsible for Collier and Lee, FGCU, FSW. When I started, I heard from the news press every day.
Yep.
I rarely hear from them now, and approximately 66% of their coverage is our high school sports.
Yep.
Which is where they find, obviously, that their audience is
That's
interested
right.
in. So,
yeah.
getting beyond them is a challenge.
So I noticed that WGCU is starting to do more local reporting, and they have highlighted some of the things in our schools. But that is a very specific, I shouldn't say that, but it seems to be a very specific audience. Maybe it will grow over time, given the fact that they are doing more local reporting. But I am concerned, for example, if we go out in '28 to re-up the sales tax, who knows? All those people are going to vote, and they're not seeing anything about the school district and what we're doing, as far as I can tell.
So I do want to add, as part of our print media outreach, while we can't control who they hire and what their beats are, in addition to your wonderful monthly messages that are very helpful in keeping our district highlighted, and we're always happy to provide you with topics if you need one. We are also seeking additional opportunities for op-eds that aren't your monthly messages. We have done some for the sales tax. Superintendent has submitted an article on behalf of the district. So we're always looking for those opportunities, and we've even done some advertising when we have specific campaigns that have a budget for it, and we'll actually do print ads with information that way. So we're working around it as much as we can.
Do you have any idea, though, where these people who used to read the newspaper get their news? Because, they're using, they may be using, I don't know, I'm trying to think, on a national basis, people sign up for the Journal, the Times, they sign up for the whatever, and they get the pushes from the Hill and some of those other news sources. Do we have any way of knowing where people locally are getting their pushes from? I see you nodding.
Well, I was going to add that the
Yeah.
small area publications, their exposure of the school district has increased dramatically, as you, I'm sure, have noticed in the headlines that Rob sends. Although the Island Reporter and the Lehigh Acres Citizen and all of those, it may be the same story, but that's okay because different audiences are reading it. So while the news press coverage may have changed, we really see that those little local areas are increasing. I know that's the case for Cape Coral where I live, and everyone in my condo has the printed version of the Cape Coral Breeze, except for us, sorry, I admitted that, at their doorstep every week. So I believe that's probably some of where they're reading it.
Thank you.
And I would say, I think our community engagement is much more robust in the last few years than it has, and so that's where we're going to have to find some of those people, is by going to the meetings that they're going to, if they're in Rotary or Kiwanis or whatever group they're in. The more we do that, the more we'll reach those groups that aren't hearing about us on the TV or in the newspaper.
Yeah, shout out to Jen Robinson, our communication is coordinator.
Absolutely.
Mr. Persons, did you want to respond to that, and I'll move on?
Yeah, just briefly, I think we have a part as a board to share this message any way possible. I know I do on Facebook about every single story. I'm the top badge earner, by the way, for the district.
Yes, you did. You earned your badge. We saw. Thank you.
But I share every story on my Facebook page, and I've got a pretty big following.
Oh, okay.
And then I notice other people share what I share.
Okay.
So what they're putting out there is actually getting much further, and I'm just one person. And I know some of the others that I see are doing the same thing. So I think we have a duty to that, and I think teachers should be encouraged to share their website of their own personal school. I get lots of stuff. Think of South Fort Myers as probably the best one. Not only the principal, but teachers and coaches. Dunbar High is another one that is constantly putting stuff out there on Facebook. And it's not just on their little website. So there's information getting out there. And media's, the internet's the way to go. I hate to say it, but that's
Yeah, no, I agree.
because a lot of those other stories y'all were talking about seem to be negative. Because that's, the print ones that get out there. On the internet here, a lot of them are very positive, so that's good. That's all.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. And Mr. Persons actually took my initial question, so I appreciate that. So, and part of that was also going back to the schools and how they do it. One thing I've come in contact, because a lot of the schools know I go out there and like to make sure to promote them online. One of the things is platforms. I know some are Facebook. Some said there's been a shift, or at least prior to Twitter or X now or Instagram. So I know consistency from that. I don't know if there's any change with that or kind of whatever they want to use. I know that was one kind of caveat I noticed, when I've gone around to some of the different schools to talk about communications and things like that. So the other thing is, in response to Mrs. Morgan's talking about where we're getting, where people are reading stuff, and another part of my life and my other job outside of here, I have to deal with communications and stuff. And I'll be polite how I say this. The experienced members of our population have kind of shifted towards Facebook for a lot of it, and Google. I've seen a lot of that data, at least I deal with that in my community. So I think that's what, as well as, like, for example, Ms. Lancaster knows a Breeze will then push out on Facebook, which will push out on something else. So that's a lot of where it's coming from. So at least, when I'm looking at it from my other life outside of here, that's what I'm kind of looking at with stuff, just to give you kind of a hyper-local perspective on that. So Google as well, Google News within that, that's another one, where Instagram and will tend to trend a little bit of our less experienced population, I guess is the best way to term that phraseology at the moment. So terminology. The other thing, again, is Mr. Persons and everyone up here is, making sure we're getting out there and promoting stuff. I know a lot of us will go out and talk to different clubs and stuff like that. So I know, especially in Cape Coral, we get a lot of communication just through, different clubs, rotaries, and things like that. So I know that's a big help for that. So appreciate all you're doing. I think we're making some great progress. I've mentioned this to Chief Gomez and Dr. B before, I'd like to see us continue becoming a little bit even more proactive with some of our stories and what's going on in schools. I do appreciate the hard work. I'm seeing an increase in that, and I'd continue to like to see that. So those are my comments now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Jordan?
Just thank you very much for all this, and I know that you're everywhere, and I really appreciate the change in even like the year, that has just passed. So thank you for everything that you all do. The most watched video, just out of curiosity, when you know what that video is for this young man, is it because of him? Do you look at that story and go, this is what made that the top producing video, and then use that as a tool to help us promote other ones?
We absolutely do. Our student profiles are always the ones that are most engaging, just followed by profiles on our staff. But anything having to do with students, specifically if it's one student story, really gets a lot of engagement. Do you have the specific details of Mr. Young?
Well, the numbers, no, I don't have the specific numbers. We just know that the #1 video on Facebook was the deaf teacher at Allen Park Elementary School, who was himself a student there and then came back as a teacher. And any kind of story that evokes that emotional reaction and connection, that's what drives it, and we look for those. I know that our media specialists reach out to schools all the time asking for examples of students, who's doing great things, who stands out to you, and they've recently done that, and they're working on some stories that will pull at the heartstrings and show how special some of our students are and how special some of our staff are in the way that they take care of them to make sure that they get everything they need and deserve.
No, and I do appreciate that, immensely, and I know that you all have started doing things with employees and staff, highlighting them, showcasing who they are and where they came from, which is always that heart-wrench thing, again, as you just described. But I just think that we are now speaking on our own narrative on who we are, and I really appreciate that, and the more we can do that, the better we all are for that, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Thank you. This is very informative. I just have a question. Why do you think that the other districts are not doing videos? Because, this is a drastic difference.
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to answer the why for us.
Curious.
It seems to be the top engagement tool that we have, so a big kudos to Mr. Wright and the multimedia team. So it could be a matter of their structure. Maybe they haven't yet invested in a team that is capable of producing the number and the quality of videos that our team is. So maybe they'll look into it now.
And the videos are great because I think it tells the story. So I think so don't stop. I'm not saying that.
Don't stop,
Great,
Mr. Wright.
thank you.
got it.
So thank you for all the hard work. I know this is a full-time job whenever I'm, even on my own social media to promote a business, it's all day long. And with us having over 100,000 students in over 50 schools, there's great things happening all the time. So I'm sure it's hard to keep up with all of that. As far as your question, Ms. Giovanelli, it's a great question. I pondered that myself. I think you all are just so ahead of the time. So kudos to you, and way to set an example for others. I know, and this is something I've been thinking about, looking at social media through all the different facets that we have. I think the ones that I get the most reach on, or the most likes, or however you want to populate that, are stories that are meaningful and promoting student success, and our legislative updates, because a lot of our community members aren't aware of even how to even find legislative updates, quite frankly. So I know that is incredibly popular, but we're now with the voucher system, we are now in a customer service situation, and the more things that we as as a system can promote positively, the more appealing it's going to be to those families that are truly, you know, I guess shopping, if you will, for where to send their students. So I just say keep it up, and I appreciate everything that you all and your team are doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, are there any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. Have a great
Very
afternoon.
much. You too.
Next on the agenda is the agenda review of the March 5th, 2024 regular agenda. Dr. Bernier, please proceed with the agenda review.
Thank you. We have a number of questions this time around. Consent for human resources was an item, in particular J1, the approval of the personnel recommendations. Specifically, a board member asked to be provided the job descriptions and the resumes of the applicants. Those have been done for that particular board member. I will make sure those are sent to all of you so that you have them in our one-on-ones. I asked if you wanted to see those. Many of you said you did not. I received that request this morning and made sure I provided those for that board member's review, but I'll get them to all of you so that all of you have the same material. Second question asked specifically was, please advise what the HR process is when we rehire employees that have breached their contract. I've not had an opportunity to discuss this particular question with the board member. I'm not aware of anybody who's on the agenda tonight who has breached a contract. There is an individual on the agenda tonight who left our employee after having a conversation with me where I told them they would either need to find a position within our legal team or seek employment. When they found employment, they gave 2 weeks notice, and I accepted that and allowed that person to transition after 2 weeks. So I will tell you that all rehires and all hires go through full application process. You've been very clear to me about the number of days you expect things to advertise, and make sure they answer the screening questions and provide the same documentation as any external applicant. That was not always the case in our Human Resources Division, my understanding is, prior to my arrival, but it's one thing we've worked very hard, and I'm very proud of the fact that we truly have an HR professional now at the helm, so that we may be able to get past some of this history. Then there was a question regarding a specific applicant after their departure from the district. And then there was a specific initials used of another employee, of which I could not necessarily devise who we were actually speaking of. But the question really comes down to, I want to be assured that you and your departments that you manage are following the policy and protocols and applying them to applicants equitably. Our hiring process in human resources, as Ms. Montemorano has said, follows the district hiring process and procedures. She is adjusting those and making sure that they're additionally rigorous. They are the same for both internal and external, as well as any type of rehire candidate. Recently, even I, when doing those interviews, have been surprised by staff, and I know this has come up in other positions within our district, where staff comes to an interview, and I would suggest they come unprepared. They're not prepared to answer questions about their previous work experience, and they are slowly beginning to get the message that you just can't come to an interview and expect, just because you've worked for us, to get a job. That's not the way things work, and I think it's important to say that publicly to the entire community, but also to our employees. You have to come prepared. There will be questions, and there'll be a comparison following the end of an interview to determine who we think is the best person moving forward. I did not participate in the human resource interviews. I left that up to the new Chief of Human Resources to select her team. Can you provide the board with a copy of an exit interview prior to the meeting, as well as the copy of the email that was sent to the board in 2022? As I said, I worked pretty hard this afternoon to get that individual all of the resumes and the job descriptions, so I need to have an additional conversation to know who we're talking about with an exit interview and what copy of what email that was sent in 22. I did a search of my archive. I can't find an email relating to this in particular, so I'm probably going to need to get the name of the individual in question. I also see minimum quals for 5 years of HR experience. Do the candidates have the 5 years of HR management experience with a focus in labor relations? All applicants are reviewed for both the minimum degree requirements as well as the other minimum qualifications. So if you don't meet minimum quals, you do not get to play in the next step in the interview process. That's different for our district across all positions. We are still working very hard to ensure that that first screening is done in human resources before a hiring manager sees anybody that's applied. So in other words, if 25 people applied and 5 don't meet minimum quals, those 5 never get to the hiring manager. They don't meet minimum qualifications. In particular, I think this revolves around the applicants who applied for the labor and employee relations position. The individual actually chosen has been involved with labor relations in school districts since 2018 and is currently serving as a chief negotiator in a Florida school district. Also, in addition, all of our job descriptions now state relevant work experience and education may be submitted to satisfy. This particular job only required a bachelor's degree, and the individual being appointed, potentially appointed this evening, has a Juris Doctorate. I don't know if there's any questions that I would, okay. Approval for the expenditure program, the management oversight of permanent facility repairs. Please provide the progress reports and completion reports to the date of all repairs made to the district website. Made to district facilities. I'm mentioning the website because a completion checklist is on the website under the Hurricane Ian tab. It was recently updated as late as this past Friday. It's updated on a weekly basis. There are areas in red. That means that things are completed. If the date is completed, it just means we missed the original deadline. So we're being transparent where we've had delays, either by not getting things done on time or by not having the proper materials with which to complete those. There still are some dates that are outstanding into April and one into May that I can see off the top of my head. And it's seriously about making sure that we have enough vendors and enough people to still continue to complete the work. But we will make sure I send a copy of that along with all of the work order requests. So you have the large, big projects: windows, blinds, cabinets, roofing, drywall, painting, acoustical ceiling tiles. Those are the big ones that are listed on the website, but we also get an update regularly from our COO that speaks to all of the outstanding work orders related to the hurricane, and we are moving forward. So we will make sure we provide you that master schedule of the Hurricane Ian repairs, as well as outstanding and projected completion dates. Please note that athletic fields and scoreboards were not listed in the master schedule in either area, as those fall outside of the scope. We specifically in this case, and I'm setting this up for one of the other questions asked, we are working with Answer Advisory. You provided us them as a tool for us to ensure that before we pay out on any invoice, that we can ensure the work is done. We did not ask Answer Advisory to take on those particular repairs like at the master schedules, in the master schedule regarding scoreboards and other field repairs, because they are related to an ILA that we have with the county. So the county really takes on the vast majority of our maintenance of our fields. It was a process that was in place before I got here. It seems to work well, but there always seems to be a little bit of debate when something needs to be fixed of whether that was damaged in the hurricane or not. Specifically, we had an incident that occurred at one of our high schools, and I encourage everybody to go out and watch baseball and softball, but when you go, you have to be very wary and very aware that foul balls are a part of that process. I suppose it's like living on a par 5 golf course on the right-hand side about 200 yards down. If you live in that particular position, you're likely to get golf balls into the backyard, and you need to plan appropriately. However, we did, once the issue was brought to my attention, we did go ahead and contract with a company. They went out, they found what it was going to cost to fix, and we're in the process of making sure that's updated. Scoreboards are a different story. Scoreboards were delayed because of a vendor who was not able, based upon the amount of employees they had. So we advised the COO and maintenance. They have gone out. They've received additional bids and additional companies that now can do the installation of scoreboards, and we feel like we're getting back on track. Scoreboards were not the first priority in hurricane repair. I know they're very vital to a great baseball and softball game, and people love them, and we want to make sure they have them. But really, we're still working on some roofs and some drywall and some paint and the other things to improve our learning environments as the top priority, and we will make sure that our scoreboards are taken care of. Question about the land dedication agreement, the .83 acres with the city of Bonita Springs. That's on the consent agenda L9. The agreement entails the dedication of .83 acres of the School District of Lee County's Tower Road property, which is 40-plus acres, to the City of Bonita. The City of Bonita is pursuing the necessary entitlements to construct improvements to the existing Bonita Grand north of Terry Street that will serve as a city park and the public and the BG Mines property. This action will allow for the necessary infrastructure for those improvements. So that's why we are creating that land dedication agreement. We're not giving away the land, we're giving them the opportunity to have the infrastructure improvements and bring things in. So I believe that's an accurate statement. And was Giovanelli?
So they're going to make improvements, but what, I mean, how does that benefit them and how does that benefit us? I mean, I guess the improvements is going to make the property more valuable, but what is the purpose?
The .83 acres is not enough for us to not utilize the property in the future. The City of Bonita was asking to make some entitlements to construction improvements to the existing Bonita Grand north of Terry Street, and that area will serve as a city park and as a good partner with the City of Bonita, who allows us to use a vacant piece of property to the east of Bonita Springs. They're allowing us then the construction process to store all our containers on that piece of property. This was just an opportunity to give them a small piece of property to utilize to make these improvements without affecting our ability to place a school.
So you're saying now that this site cannot be a school site?
No, I'm saying it can be. It does not impact the
Okay,
ability
I want
for
to
it
make
to be a
sure.
school.
I wanted to make sure. Because it was almost the gateway site, so, or not gateway, excuse me, Bonita Springs, that was one of the sites for that. So are we going to have an interlocal agreement with this then? I mean, this is
No,
what
it's a
that
one-time
dedication agreement.
It's a one-time action that provides them this small section of .83 of an acre.
Just a portion. Okay, thank you.
If we were to build on this site in the future, we would then have to fence off accordingly.
Okay, okay.
Okay? L10 is the next one. It has an approval of the lease shared use agreement with the Village of Estero, specifically what we talked at the last briefing about 2 weeks ago. Can you please explain the year lease, the 99-year lease and the land dedication agreement? The lease and standard use agreements formalize a collaborative effort between our school district and the Village of Estero. The agreement set terms for shared sports complexes on the site of Estero High School's athletic fields. This initiative highlights our commitment to maximizing the resource and enhancing athletic opportunities for both Estero High School students and the broader community. The Village of Estero assumes responsibility for the capital costs associated with all of the improvements, as well as the ongoing management and maintenance of the facilities. Additionally, the village has a requirement to contribute $10 million toward modernization and expansion efforts of Estero High School in the first 5 years of the lease. These agreements ensure that Estero High School's interscholastic athletic programs have priority access to the facilities. Additionally, it grants the village residents access to recreational amenities when the facilities are not in use for students and school events. Can you please advise when the property was purchased and with what? I have to go to a different chart, which I also provided. The 9350 Block Lane, the purchase date was 4/9/19. Was purchased from the Newquist Family Trust for $2.6 million. It was not used with half-penny sales. It was done with impact fees. And I could give you a big, long accounting line, but I'll send you the chart. 9400 Block Lane was purchased on 6/4/19 from Park Place of Estero LLC. The cost was $1.5 million, and again, that was paid with impact fees, not half-penny sales tax. The board members also asked for information regarding the documents as to this purchase. I have provided to that board member, and will make sure I send it to the remainder of the board.
So the impact fees, that is one of the things that caused me to pause, because I remember the Florida Auditor's report was back in 2019, talked about impact fees, and we had to move monies because we had used impact fees for property that, I don't know, property, but we had used impact fees. So I want to make sure that, because in the audit, it mentions and I sent this to you, Dr. B, I don't know if you got to see it. It says further, the county ordinance requires the school board to submit a report to the county for at least 3 years summarizing all expenditures of funds and demonstrating that all expenditures comply with requirements of the rationale nexus text as defined in the Florida case law. So I just want to make sure that we complied with all those ordinances and so forth.
Without having that information directly in front of me, I can't share that has been done, but this was purchased in 19, so those requirements have since passed. Considering the last Auditor General's report did not cite this as a finding, I would assume that they would have reviewed this since they saw it as a finding in the past, so they would have, in our operational audit, did not include non-compliance with impact fee.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about now, if we give this property over as a 99-year lease, this property was purchased with impact fees. Impact fees are regarding that tax dollars being used, and that's from monies all over the county. Now we're putting a park, we're giving a park and property to a government agency that only benefits one community, not the whole community. So I just want to make sure that, does that make sense? No?
As we talked
That's what I'm
about in the
saying.
presentation, while the Village of Estero is the partner, first and foremost, I think it's very important that all the documents you're being asked to approve tonight have been reviewed by not only our attorneys, but their attorneys as well for compliance with the law. Second of all, while the Village of Estero is leasing the land from us, they don't own it, so the land stays as ours. Thirdly, I would suggest that we talk specifically about baseball and soccer and other tournaments that will draw in people from around Southwest Florida, not just open just to Village of Estero residents. That's not what this is saying. It's open to other people to use only when our students don't occupy it.
Right, but, I mean, we should be focusing on academics versus educational, I mean, it says educational facilities here, but I mean, it's not really academics. And my concern is what happens when we could have, we're having growth in Lee County, and who's to say that we're not going to need that property for additional seats? How do we revoke that 99-year lease at that point?
There are clauses within the contract that permit both parties to be released. I don't have those directly in front of me, so I'm not going to read something or attempt to recall it from memory. But I will also share with you that this has always been an athletic issue, and you think about $10 million worth of income coming into the school district, as well as the desire and to not have to spend money on refurbishing and renovating fields. That money does go, that money that is now spent by the Village of Estero in this partnership, that money now moves to our ability to either do something within our school buildings that are older with the maintenance projects that we have, or to use those dollars to continue to help support the 10-year capital plan.
I understand. I just want to make sure that we're doing, I have a hard time with the leasing aspect of property. We're not in the business to be property managers, so that's my concern. And I understand that Estero is going to take on that responsibility, but it just concerns me that we purchased property with a specific intent, and now we're changing that, and that's my concern. Because we didn't have to buy this property, but yet we did, and now we're not using it because it was supposed to be for the Innovation K through 8, so for seats. So I just don't understand how we just keep pivoting, and we have a plan in place and we pivot from that constantly. So that's my concern. I'm concerned that we could need the seats in a few years, and then we have a beautiful park there. So
Currently, the Estero High School is slightly under-enrolled. At last count that I had from Dr. Malloy, we had about 150 seats. Could be less than that now that were still available to us. Before entering even into conversations with this, we had discussions with our construction facilities people. There is another way to approach growth at Estero High School specifically that would allow for growth at Estero High School if the Village of Estero began to move beyond what their projections are for this particular area of Estero. The growth, I would say, is probably not directly all in the village of Estero. I call it Estero East and Northeast. That's where the growth is, down Corkscrew and north going up towards 82, where the Kingston project and other things are going on. We're already ahead of the game there with sites for middle school OO, Triple N, MMM. We already are in the process of building what we need in order to accommodate that growth closer to where the growth is occurring. I will agree with you that there may be some potential discussion that we should have individually about how we came to own some of these pieces of property, because the Innovation School is still in the budget. It's actually on the agenda tonight to move forward with phase 1, and it is located now in District 5, closer to the east, where it was needed for the seats versus where it was originally devised, either on those pieces of property or on the piece recently that we were able to eliminate from our holdings, and that was the area at Three Oaks.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we're being good stewards of our tax dollars, and that's because it's the community's money, and it's important that, you know, when we purchase something and we tell the community we're going to do this, and then we pivot and do something else, and then we pivot again and do something else, that is alarming, because and this has no reflection of you. This has to do with prior decisions made in prior administrations, but I think it's important that we stay committed to making sure that we're good stewards, and making sure that when we tell the community we're going to do something, that we do that. And that we're clear in why we're changing and going in a different direction. And I hesitate here because we haven't done that well. And it's important that we do. And I'm always going to be that person that, you know, it talks about oversight and what is happening, because people need to be aware. We work for the people, and I specifically work for the people. And the one thing that I can do up here is advocate for making sure the community is aware of the changes and the things that happens here. So I thank you for your time and explanation. I still am concerned over the property being initially purchased with impact fees, and then the plan switching and pivoting. So I'm still having a hard time with that, but thank you.
My apologies. Item L12 is the approval to piggyback both Collier Public Schools ITB for the mitigation of indoor air quality services, and to approve the piggyback with Charlotte County for cleaning services, including mold and water remediation. One of the initial questions was specifically why such an amount difference. There's a huge difference between going in and looking at indoor air quality and the amount of cost associated with doing those relatively simple tests. Again, I'm not an IAQ expert, although I felt after the hurricane I was becoming one. The real cost is in the remediation. If you find mold, if you find bacteria, the real cost is in those higher amounts. So I wanted to make sure we got that out first. I would also share that legally we have complied in our former ITN, because the ITN is very, very, very clear that never can someone do an indoor air quality test and then be allowed to do the remediation work. They always have to be separated. So there are a number of questions about whether we're compliant with law with our formal ITN. We believe that we are. It was approved by legal and signed off as to form. But as we move forward with the new ITN, which was requested, and I do believe after 5 years of an ITN, even though we had 1 year left, what we've done is we've asked to piggyback both Collier and Charlotte's mold and water remediation, as well as indoor air quality services, to give us sufficient time as to put an ITN out between now and June and bring it to the board for approval in July. There are a number of questions about the Taylor English investigation and recommendation in the Florida Auditors Report from 2019. I actually had the Taylor English investigation home with me over the weekend and was reading it regarding other issues. I don't want to get into a protracted conversation, but I think the recommendations are not specific to the ITN. They're much more specific to ensuring that we, as I stated before, like we hired the contractor to help us ensure that when we received an invoice that the work has been done from post-hurricane. That is a big issue. The other issue is climate and conditions that existed in some of our departments, and making sure that we continue to work with bid processes and making sure that both our employees and the vendors know. We've done a great job in policy of creating not only better procurement policies, but also a review committee that when a vendor potentially has misbehaved, there is now an avenue for the district to meet and convene and look at that vendor's work. The difficulty with that sometimes is what we know and what we can prove. That's why I'm glad that the legal team sits in as a member of that particular committee. So then I think it's called the discipline committee related to our vendors and our vendors' work. The new solicitation will be going out for remediation services, and at the request of myself, concurrently and per request, the board recommendation, the new solicitations are being prepared for consulting and remediating services, and the solicitations will be separate contracts for each type of service. So we'll be able to move forward in that realm as well. Public hearings, I had a question regarding the approval to conduct a public hearing regarding the social studies materials. These have all been approved by the state, and there's nothing going on in legislation that could change with these instructional materials. Please advise. So I'm assuming the nature of this question is, why are we doing this when everything's already been approved? We're doing because this is part of our policies and procedures to have a public hearing. Not only will we have the public hearing, but then we'll bring it again, and there'll be an additional hearing at the actual board meeting when it's approved to provide opportunities for the community to respond. The board member is definitely correct that we're working off the state approved and vetted shortlist for social studies textbooks, which was shared at the February 6th school board briefing. We are required by state statute to have an open public hearing. State statute 1006.283, paragraph 8, section B states, an open notice school board hearing to receive public comment on recommended instructional materials is required. So that's why we're having the public hearing this evening. Those are all the questions that were submitted.
All right. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is public comment. Attorney McIntosh, will you please address public comment?
School board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on the meeting's agenda. If you completed a public comment card, please provide it to the staff. Public comment will be held at the podium in the center aisle in front. Please be advised that the board will not respond during public comment to remarks made by speakers. However, at the conclusion of the public comment, the chair or superintendent may respond. Speakers who have failed to follow proper decorum in the chambers will be ruled out of order. Any speaker continuing with such remarks will be required to relinquish the microphone per board policy 0169.1 and may be removed from the chambers. There will be one warning. Per board policy 169.1, the time per speaker is 3 minutes. If there are 20 speakers or less, you will find a countdown on the big screens in front of the room. Once your time has elapsed, the microphone would automatically shut off. Please state your name when you approach the microphone. Well, do we have any public speakers? Seeing none has signed up, is there anyone in the audience that did not receive a public comment card would like to make a comment? Having none, no public speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to the good of the order. The next item we have is good of the order, board member comments, and any reports. I'm going to start this afternoon with Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. Real quick, we had our SPA CSI committee meeting last week, I believe, sorry. It was after the last board meeting. So, again, it was essentially the same presentation from student services on student discipline and some of the numbers. So it was really good for the committee to hear. Very lively, productive discussion on it because, for example, within that committee, there's actually one of the members is a current teacher within the school district, as well as there's a longtime sub that's in that. So I thought that was a really unique perspective, hearing, from the sub as well as the full-time teacher. So that was interesting. There was some follow-up general request, I think it was with Mr. Irusi, in regards to getting some specific data on the schools themselves in regards to the presentation we had. So, and then, some follow-up again, where the administration's focus was on that. It was kind of a part 2 of another meeting we'd had early in the year. So, but I thought it was a really good discussion. So, and I know it's probably going to come up again a little bit in one of our next topics, but I'll reserve the rest of my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli.
I'll be quick too. I started last week. I did Read Across America at one school, and then I started again this week, and I'm going to be reading across Lee County, I feel like. And it's kind of fun because Monday I spent time at Pelican and went to lunch with the kids, and that was fun. They're so funny because they would get a lunch and brought a lunch, and then they would eat part of what was in their lunch and part of what they got. I was just. I was trying to figure that out. And then one was just eating her donuts instead of the food. And I said, oh, you're going to eat your donuts before you eat your lunch? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So it was just interesting because they just do and this was kindergartners. So I don't know if I would have ever done that with my kindergartner. But anyways, it's different these days. But one of the things that Debbie and I attended was the close-up presentation of the ESOL, and I just want to say wow to that because I had no idea really what I was going to, and I would recommend next year. This is their first one, so they're going to do it again. I recommend you attend it because we had taken pictures of the different presentations, and so it's Lee County Youth Policy Summit. They went to Tallahassee, and some of them went to DC. They had different topics that they talked about, and they did a board on, and I just wanted to give you the topics because it was really an eye-opener for Debbie and I. Domestic violence, gun violence, corruption, human trafficking, school shootings, sentencing, and I think that was regarding the code of conduct, right, more so. And the students were really engaged, but my concern was their overall concern over their safety. And it was most of it was about safety that we were able to get through. We didn't get through all of the boards and the students, but they were very engaged, and it was enlightening because they all had different backgrounds. I mean, so I started asking them, where were they from? And a lot of them were from Cuba. Which was interesting. And one was from Texas, and her family wasn't, but she was from Texas, and she was actually very open, and she told us about the gangs in Texas, and they all had ideas what they were wanting to do when they graduate, because some of them were juniors and seniors. We had one that's been our student represent. He's been down here twice? Kristen. Wait, how do you say his last name? It's Whitaker. Okay, it was different. And he was there. He was the only one that wasn't part of the, Widdish, right?
Windish.
Oh, okay. I knew it was different. Anyways, he was the only one that wasn't ESOL, but he's been very advocacy on this, the violence, and they all had a story. That was the whole thing. They each had a story of why a personal story of why they picked the topics that they did, and I thought that was really interesting. Other than that, I went to Student Art Walk, and I saw Debbie there as well Friday night, and that's spectacular and always is. Our students are very talented, and our staff is very dedicated to making sure that their students in class are at events like that, because they're there till late at night. They have to set up, and so it's a big event for our students and kiddos. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Ms. Jordan.
Well, thank you. I'm going to just elaborate. So the close-up summit was, it was really, really good. And so when you're sitting there listening, and as Ms. Giovanelli had stated, they all had, when we asked why they chose the topic that they did, it was based on something that happened to them in their lives. So now you have a team of 3 or 4 that now you have to convince, my story is worth, you know, this policy, because they're trying to create policies is what they were doing. And they went to Tallahassee and they presented these policies to see how they could move, you know, up with those. But listening to them, and I mean, the one young man, he was saying how he came, it was safety. Well, actually, his was, I'm trying to remember what it was. Corruption. So his corruption was based on the fact that he and his brothers, 5 Hispanics were driving in a vehicle and they were pulled over because his father had a soup car. So his perception of that, and speaking to his colleagues, you know, created the policies of what that looks like and how do you become safer in an environment in which they live in. So I felt that they just had so much to share. And yes, the young lady from Texas, I mean, she really let you know what it was like. And for a minute there, I thought about someone else from Texas. So it was, it was really great, and we had an opportunity to sit and have conversation with them. But what I did think was interesting is that someone had spoken to them and said, if someone had walked up to you and said to you, you're in trouble, it was based on discipline in school. If you're in trouble because of you're insubordinate, would you understand what that meant? And they said no, they would not know what those words meant. So they were not being disrespectful, they just did not understand the terminology. So I thought that all of that was really an eye-opener for me, but just the opportunity for them to do this, they loved it. They want to participate in it again. So I will definitely go back, because you're engaged so much with them that it's hard to go to that next one, because there's so much for them to share. And then with our kids at Art Walk, Dr. Jason T., I mean, phenomenal job that he did with those kids. There were over 15,000 students there. We took over the streets. It was funny listening to people walking around going, why are all these kids there? I've never seen so many kids in my life. But one was better than the next. I mean, it was just really phenomenal to see how creative that they were. Kids playing with Home Depot buckets, you know, they created their own little band. It was just really exciting to see that, and just the love that the teachers had for that, and the hard work that they all did. So I really appreciate all the teachers and for coming with their students, and their parents who brought all their students to represent all the great things that we do here in the county. I as well have been doing the Read Across America, and I've had opportunities to be in the first grade class who want to help you read the books as you go along, which I love. It's really great, because I don't really have that many little people in my family anymore. A few, but not that many. But they all, you know, told me what the book was about and the lessons that they learned from it. So it was a really great conversation with them. And then 2 other things real quick. Golden Apple, the social, we went there. It was exciting to see so many teachers there and what they're looking forward to. They're all it's almost finished with that right now. And then the United Way kickoff, the chili cook-off, that was excellent. I was actually able to, last year I got there, it was too late, but this year I got there in time, and there was the same, and I forget what his name was, but he's the same champion from last year, won again this year. And it was fantastic. But they won't tell you the recipes, but it was good. One would tell you that. But that's all that I have to say right now, so thank you.
Mr. Persons?
I got to go to Tallahassee with a different group of students, 30 students from Orange Marsh and Lemuel Till. And they were up there for 3 days. They were hosted by the President of the Senate, Kathleen Pasadomo, and then also my daughter, Representative Jenna Persons Mollica, talked to them as far as how the legislature works. The East Lee County Chamber of Commerce paid for all their lodging and food, and our district. And a special thanks to Dr. Benier arranging for transportation for the students to get up there. It'd be a long walk. But the students themselves were the most impressive. First off, they were all dressed for success. All the boys had a tie on, many had coats on, all the girls were dressed very nicely. Matter of fact, I felt badly out of dress because, as you see, I don't normally wear a tie. So, but they learned a lot, and they got to go watch the Senate in action. They were got to stand up and be on YouTube and recognized and wave at everybody. They also went to the Supreme Court, the House of Representatives. As a Gator fan, I hate to say it, they got to go tour FSU. But it was a great experience, and there was a second year that has happened, and I'm looking forward to going again next year. That's all for now.
Ms. Morgan.
I just want to comment on the second grade reading pilot. I went to the Future Makers meeting last week. The second grade reading pilot is being done at Spring Creek. It is a third semester pilot using community volunteers who are following, well, I should say that the principal, Jillian Fioria, and I believe it's Chelsea Faber, is that right? Yeah. Chelsea has put together a packet like this that basically walks you through the science of reading and all of the levels that the kids need to achieve in order to become readers. And so we sort of had our first hearing about how has this worked. Because they have a very structured program. The expectation is the tutor will follow the directions of the teacher in terms of what the skills are that the tutor is focusing on in the hour that they're working with the student. And apparently it's going extremely well. Initial testing shows that all of the kids are making gains where they need to make gains. They will know when the third quarter progress monitor, or the third progress monitoring is done, to what extent it has affected progress monitoring. But there is a lot of excitement about the program. They are talking about moving it from this one school to 2 schools in each zone. They will be developing some sort of PR piece so that they can tell the community how this has played out. And they also said that the kids, instead of feeling singled out because they don't know something, the kids feel really special because somebody's coming to work with them, and the same person works with them all of the time. So I hope that was a decent report. So anyway, I'm really excited because this is one of these things that the collaboratory is working with the district on trying to find opportunities for the public to engage with us to strengthen some of the participation of people in pursuit of student achievement for our kids. So I'm very excited about that and looking forward to sort of the final report. And that's my report. So thank you.
I also got to do Read Across America, and I went off task and developed my own lesson plan. So I apologize, Mrs. Taylor, for throwing the class into a tailspin of basically focusing on dream vacation for spring break. So we have students that would like to go to Argentina, all the way to Costa Rica, and even Paris and the moon. So that was a great, so my apologies for throwing that off. And I would like to wish a very happy birthday to one of our board members, Miss Morgan.
Thank you.
Yep. This is the last birthday you get to spend with us.
That's
so.
right. Yes.
But I'll save any more comments for this evening's. Attorney McIntosh, do you have anything?
I have nothing. Thank
Okay.
you.
And Dr. Bernier?
I think I just have a couple of quick things. First and foremost, thank you for the information on websites. I'll get started with the staff. We did this before when we looked at media materials. It was a little bit of effort, but we can put that effort in, especially when it comes to eliciting parent volunteers for school improvement and for the SACs, PTOs, any other parent reach out. Want to deliver a bit of good news. I did it via email, but the community should know the U.S. Department of Agriculture came finally. These audits have been delayed because of COVID for a number of years, but the U.S. Department of Agriculture was on the ground to visit, I believe, 9 of our school sites. They left with no audit findings. Same type of language we get when there is no finding. They always have the extra language of where we looked, we didn't find anything. But good news to the community, and want to reach out to both Amy Desmore, Susan Millay, as well as Candy Messenger. They worked really, really hard, and our school principals and admin teams. There's a lot going on. Hopefully they're not listening about donuts at lunchtime, because they're not supposed to have donuts at lunchtime. So thank goodness the USADA was not there on that given day. This is also National School Social Worker Recognition Week, so please keep that in mind as you're in your travels. They're really amazing, really wonderful people. I want you to be aware that an after-action review regarding Cape Coral was conducted today with Cape Coral Police Department, our Chief of Security, and members of the government and staff here. I'll probably put more into that when we get the opportunity this evening. And I also would like to make mention that Kelly Services went live last week, short of a snafu on Thursday night, Friday morning on a computer glitch that has been fixed. Our fill rates for substitutes are hovering around 84–85%. That's significantly higher than they were prior, when we hovered at 65 to 70 was a good day. So they have successfully transitioning more and more of our people, but they're also finding additional people to work on behalf of our classrooms. Apologize to the principals for the flip. The good news is, while some of the jobs were canceled on Friday, the subs never got notification of it. So they came to work anyway. It was just a matter of getting them reestablished in the computer. And then I will also take the opportunity to wish Kathleen Morgan, Sam Fisher, and Debbie Jordan, who have birthdays this month. And we have a small celebration in between now and when we have the board meeting. So hopefully we'll be able to have some cookies and some cake and celebrate everybody making it one more year around the sun. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Excellent. We will have a student performance tonight starting at 5:45, followed by our action meeting at 6. At this point, having no other business come before this body and seeing no objection, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 3:46 p.m.
Hold on.